Hello guys, welcome back to Britton Farms Homestead. This is April and I'm going to tell you the 5 things not to do to get onions. If you're getting a lot of green on your onions and you're not getting onions like this, I'm going to tell you 5 mistakes that you possibly are doing and why you're not getting big onions. If you like what you're seeing, go ahead and like, subscribe, hit that bell notification so you get a notification every time we put out a video. One of the first tips or mistakes you may be making is when you're planting your onions. Here in North Georgia, Zone 6B, we plant our onions October, November. We start them from seed and they overwinter. In the winter, they put on the green. And in the summer, when the days get longer, they start to bulb up at the bottom. And we'll go over how onions actually grow, because you can't just throw the seed in the ground and walk away. It would be nice if it was that easy, but it's not. To be successful growing onions, that's the first thing you need to know is how they grow. Onions are photothermoperiodic, which means they're sensitive to day length and daylight hours. Onions are stimulated into stopping production of green leaves or stems and starting production of the bulb as the days get longer between spring and summer. So in 6B, we plant our onions from seed around November, December, somewhere in there. They overwinter, work on their green leaves, and then as the days get longer, they start producing a bulb. So planting your onions at the correct time has a lot to do with getting bulbs on your onions and not all green. When you're choosing your onions, this may be another mistake. Mistake number 1 that you may have is that you can choose a long day onion, a short day onion, and an intermediate day onion. Long day onions, the bulbs begins to form 14 to 16 hours of sunlight. Short day onions is 10 to 12 hours of sunlight. Intermediate day onions is in between. And I'll put a map to show you where your climate would be and the hours of sunlight. Here in 6B, we can't grow a long day onion and get a bulb. We will only get a bunch of greens and a tiny little bulb because we never have 14 to 16 hours sunlight. Another mistake may be that you're planting the wrong type. So you can plant onions from seeds, from sets, or from starts. So seeds, of course, is just the seeds, and you start them in a tray, and then once they get so tall, you take them and you transplant them outside and you grow them. Those need to be, started indoors most of the time and then moved outside. So sets, let's talk about sets. I don't recommend sets because onions are a biannual, which means they flower the second year. Sets are a second year onion. They are harvested, they're planted from seed, and then they're stored. They're harvested, they're stored for you to buy at the store. Once they come out of their dormant stage, whether it's been 2 years or not, they're producing flowers. And once an onion has bolted or produced a flower, either one, bolting, that's what bolting means, is that it just prematurely produces a flower. It's done growing. So at that point, it's time to pull that onion because it's not going to do anything else except go to seed. And bolting can be caused from stress, from temperatures, from moving from hot to cold or cold to hot in quick times, not like moving from spring to summer. It would be sometimes when we're going from spring to summer, we'll have a night that, it gets down in the 30s, and then the next day it might be 80. So that confuses an onion, and it thinks, oh no, I'm about to die. I need to put off seeds and make more onions. So it bolts. So bolting is no good. You don't want bolting. But we don't recommend the sets because they're more likely to do that because they are a second-year onion, because they've been started from seed, they've been put in the ground, and they've grown to, I don't know, they're about yay big when you get them. I'll put a picture of some up here. And you put them in the ground, they're a second-year onion because in nature, that's how they work. And the onion thinks, hey, it's my second year, I need to put off seed. So they're more likely to bolt. Now sets, all sets are is where somebody started them from seed and they've got yay tall or a little taller. They've pulled up that plant, it's just a plant, and you put it in the ground. That gets you a little bit of head start. It's not the same thing as a set. A set is a second-year onion. A start is just the plant that you're buying. It does give you a little bit of head start if you weren't able to overwinter them for them to get on their green. You can start them off as the little plants, and it gives you a little bit of a head start. Let's talk about the soil they like to live in and what they like to eat. So onions love fertile, excellent drained soil. Onions love fertile, excellent drained soil. Onions are a root crop, and they're prone to rotting in the ground, especially in hot, humid climates. Well-drained soil will prevent this. It's nothing worse than to have an onion that looks well on the top, got your green, you think it's making a big bulb at the bottom, and you pull it out and it's rotted because your soil wasn't drained enough and it's just got wet and mushy and nasty and it's rotted in the ground. So let's talk about fertilizing your onions. Onions are heavy feeders, so nitrogen equals leaves or shoots, and phosphorus equals root production. So when you first plant your seedlings, you want them to have plenty of nitrogen to start that shoot growth, the green on the top. You want plenty of that. Sorry, my rooster won't shut up. But you want to give them plenty of that so they can go ahead and put on those shoots and have that green and everything they need in the soil to be able to produce that. So while they're doing leaf production, that stage will need more nitrogen. In the spring and summer, when it starts the bulb formation, like we talked about, when the days get longer is when that bulb begins to grow. It just sits there all winter until the days get longer and then it starts to grow. But when it starts that, it needs more phosphorus for root production. So you would cut down on the nitrogen and do more phosphorus. Now we do all natural here. We do, actually we use a lot of rabbit poop, which has a lot of nitrogen, phosphorus, but it's a slow release and it's a cool poop that you can put right on them. So that's all my onions have had on them. But if you go to the store looking for fertilizer, make sure you get the right kind for the right time of year and what your onions are doing at that time. So that may be a mistake that you're making too. If you give too much nitrogen and not enough phosphorus at the wrong time, if it needs that phosphorus for the bulbing and you're feeding mostly nitrogen, you're still gonna have just leaves, shoots, and no bulb. So that may be another mistake that you're making. So that's another tip. Make sure you're fertilizing the right thing at the right time. Our next step is spacing of your onions. You want them 4 to 6 inches apart. And this leaves room for that bulb to grow and them not to run into each other. If you're doing direct sow with your onions, you may have to go thin some of those out because they do need that 4 to 6 inches apart so they have room to grow and they're not squishing up against each other and they're not having to fight for that nutrients and water that they need to go ahead and bulb. They need room to grow out. And if you've direct sowed, go ahead and thin some of those out. Try to transplant them somewhere else if you have them too thick in one spot. Our next mistake you may be making is weed control. And as a gardener, we all know that weeds and pests are our biggest problem. So you want to keep the weed pressure down. because we don't want our onions competing with water and nutrients from weeds. It sucks. So if you can just keep the weeds down, whether that means pulling them or putting down something to keep the weeds down, like cardboard or shavings or mulch or whatever you may have, whatever system you want to use, but you need to keep the weeds down so they do not have to compete for their nutrients and their water, because they are heavy feeders. When your onions first start out, they're going to be very small and have little green on them. And during the winter, they're going to start putting on that green. And they're going to get more green and taller and taller and taller. And they may even get so tall they get top heavy and fall over. So we're going to talk about trimming your onions. That's another mistake you may be making. This should help you get bigger bulbs. So when your onions get really tall, the green gets really tall, they start to fall over, you can go ahead and trim that off and chop it up and put it in a recipe. That's going to promote more leaf production, and for every green shoot that you have on an onion, that's a layer on your bulb. So you want as many of those as you can get. I've heard 13 is the ideal number, but you know, I'll take what I can get. So don't be discouraged if you don't have 13, but you know, as they grow and if they become a problem and they're falling over, go ahead and clip those off. It will not hurt to clip those off. I would just leave, I don't know, 3 inches, 4 inches, something like that. Cut it 3 to 4 inches off, you know, from the ground, and leave a little bit, but I would just cut those others off and I would just chop them up, put them in a recipe, and it's going to promote more leaf growth, which is another layer on your onion. So I hope you guys have learned something from this. I have done all kinds of research. It has took me 2 years to learn how to grow onions, but now I have onions. And right now, I don't want to pull them yet, but right now, they're about the size of a baseball. I would like some that's the size of a softball. So I'm just gonna leave them in there. I'll also do an update when I start to harvest them, but I will go ahead and leave them in there. I will, you know, give them some more time, hope they grow some more, because it's spring, almost summer. Those bulbs are forming, and I'll put pictures of me planting them. I mean, they were this tall when I put them in the ground. They might have been 3 inches tall and just had a white spot on the end. There was no bulb at all. So I'm very happy and excited about this, but it took me a very long time to learn how to do this, because there's a lot that goes into growing onions and people really don't know it. And the biggest thing that I found is growing the right onions, the long day, the short day, or the intermediate day. Because if you get the wrong one, no matter what you do, you will not have onions, because they have to have that certain amount of daylight to do a bulb at the bottom. You'll just have green and, you know, just a little tiny bulb about this big. I'll show you some onions, what I'm talking about. I'll put a picture right up here. Anyway, I hope this helped you out. If you like what you're seeing, go ahead, like, subscribe, hit that bell notification so you get a notification every time we put out a video. And these are my tips for growing onions and SHEDWARS. And if you don't know what SHEDWARS is, it's a competition between YouTube channels to show the world how to grow food. I hope I've showed somebody how to grow onions today. Good luck. If you have any suggestions, go ahead and put them down in the bottom. Let me know what type of onion you prefer to grow, and if you've ever had big onions. Thanks for watching. God bless you all.